Thank you all so much for joining us for this ADA office hours. I'm going to toss it over to John very quickly. Just one or two housekeeping items first. The survey, if you have not taken our survey, please do. It will be open until the end of the week, and then we will be compiling the results. And will be one of the things we're sharing with the ADA Accessibility Steering Committee in the first meeting to really help set some priorities for where enterprise-wide support is needed and where are the things we need to move quickly on. So your insight there is very, very important. Also, all of the invites have gone out for the ADA Accessibility Steering Committee and they have been accepted. So we will start meeting with that group every month. And if we need to, as we get closer to that compliance time, ramp that up, we will see, but that is on its way. Also, we expect to post within the next week or two the ADA Digital Accessibility Coordinator position. I will share that job post with that group once it is posted and ready to go. So if you all know, especially our web folks, know of anyone who might have some expertise in that space, we will definitely be interested in finding any and all candidates we can for that and being able to get a qualified person in quickly to provide some of the technical assistance, which the survey results show us is definitely desired by many folks. So hoping to get that done as quick as possible. So with that, those are all my announcements. I'll turn it over to John to take us through what he's got planned for today, and then we will take any questions that you guys all might have. So John, take it away.
All right, let's get this going. Okay, so I hope everyone can see the presentation. To start with, we have a few updates to talk about. This is for the ADA Compliance Tracking Dashboard and AEM documents. In the ADA Compliance Tracking Dashboard, we need to remember that it is a manually updated resource. It is another tool that you can use to help focus your efforts. Let me see here. If you go to the teamtn.gov/accessibility website, you can go to resources, and under the resources, you can find the ADA Compliance Tracking Dashboard. It is the dashboard that has the total plan view applications, total agency assets, FileNet access assets, and AEM assets shown on the screen. Now, we had a few questions come up last week in regards to, well, we see it was updated on the 8th, but it's not showing any updates or any of the changes that I made in AEM assets, for example. So one thing we need to understand when it comes to the documents, especially the AEM assets section of this dashboard, is when you are working with your documents in AEM, don't leave them in an unpublished status. Just because they are unpublished doesn't mean they can't be found. And when I say they can't, when they can still be found by search if you know what you're doing. So anything that you want to unpublish, just go ahead and remove from AEM altogether. You don't want that still being available online because it could open you up to liability if it is not remediated. So again, don't just unpublish the document, remove it. Download it, archive it locally on your machine if you don't want it on the website, but remove it completely from AEM because it can still be found if you know what you're doing. So another thing that was pointed out to me earlier this morning in a meeting is the tn.gov search bar. So let me see if it will let me share my screen. Okay. So we all know tn.gov. We all know the website, how it works. But if you go to do a search, and we're going to leave it blank just to get an idea. So of all the results that are going to come up, you want to kind of look at files to see what's going, and instantly you can see no title. No title. This is whatever this is. These documents, these PDF files are not accessible. They don't meet requirements. There's no title, this again, these things don't work. They're not going to meet requirements. So that's just for the entire tn.gov domain. Let's do this locally. And I've not put anything in the search field here. I'm going to do this on our own. And we are going to have a few issues I've got to address. So let me focus on files. So we've got titles. It's looking good. It's pulling up a descriptor. Uh-oh. Here we are. This one's not going to pass. It's kind of explanatory, but it's not. This doesn't follow best practices. So we need to make sure that in our documents, us included, we're putting our titles in there. You can use this as a quick way to just kind of go over your website and look at, okay, what I currently have available and what I can find is, we've got a few that we're going to have to address. We've got several actually. So that one works. But you can see how you can use this as a quick tool to quickly scan through and find items that you need to address and remediate. Back to the compliance tracking dashboard. I'm sorry I didn't have this shared earlier. This is what I was referring to. So those AEM assets are the ones that, they're pulling the total count from. And if you don't remove it from AEM, there won't be an update. That you won't see a change. Even if you unpublish it, it's still in AEM. So the numbers won't reflect that. And again, you can find this dashboard under the Team TN website under resources, and it's the ADA compliance tracking dashboard. So let me go back to my presentation. All right. So on to the topic for today's meeting. Documents, purpose, structured, and proper, creating accessible documents for state government, which is building inclusive communication from the ground up. Now, yes, this is, again, almost a rehash of earlier trainings or meetings that we've had on proper document structure and everything. But I'm going to quickly go over a few of the more basic things that we understand and hit on some higher level items that we need to make sure we're addressing. So here we all understand why document accessibility matters. That's why we're here. I'm not going to go through all this. I will hit on the high point that for the state of Tennessee, we are serving 7.23 million Tennesseans, and that number grows every day. Over 166,000 of those have disabilities. So the biggest thing that we can throw at this is making sure that every citizen, every person that hits tn.gov is going to be able to access and use the information that we provide. So we need to understand that our documents, whatever format, are nothing more than tools. Now, they are communication vehicles between government agencies and its citizens. They are legal instruments that establish rights, obligations, and procedures. They are service delivery mechanisms that enable civic participation. And they are information gateways that provide transparency and accountability. So every document should serve a clear, defined purpose, be structured for easy navigation and comprehension, follow accessibility standards from conception, and enable equal access to government activities, services, and programs. So one thing to remember when it comes to any of the documents that we provide, they are tools. These tools are to perform or inform regardless of their ability, regardless of the ability or nature of the individual using them. They're not required to look extra fancy with tons of visuals and extra fluff. Their main goal is to simply provide the individual with the information and resources to make more informed decisions about the activities, services, or programs that we as a state offer. So the foundation, a document's purpose and structure. Before creating any document, you need to ask, what specific need does this document serve? Will it inform, provide, or serve? Who is the primary audience? What action should the reader be taking after they read? How will people with disabilities access this information? So you want to structure it first and style it second. You want logical information hierarchy. You want clear headings and subheadings, consistent formatting throughout, and meaningful navigational elements. So there are universal design principles for documents, and this kind of falls under the acronym POUR. They need to be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So to be perceivable, as we know, they got to have a high contrast colors when in use, 4.5 to 1 minimum ratio. All fonts need to be readable, at least 11 or 12 point. Alt text for any and all images and graphics, captions for audio or video content, keyboard navigation and support. So tab through it, make sure it's working. Logical tab order, clear focus indicators, reasonable time limits for timed content like courses or quizzes, things like that that are of a time nature. Make sure you're using plain language. You want to write for an 8th grade reading level or below. You want consistent navigation and layout, clear instructions, and any error messages need to be easily read or identifiable. That the functionality needs to be predictable. It needs to be compatible with assistive technologies, using properly structured markup and future-proof file formats, and be standards compliant. So here I'm going to go over a few of the document types. So for text documents, this is for Word documents, PDFs, and web pages. You want to structure it properly. Understanding basic page or document structure is going to solve a lot of problems. So you want to start with a title, then your H1, or sometimes your H1 is your title, then your H2, your H3, and so forth in sections. So your structure needs to have the built-in heading styles. You want to use that. You want to create a logical reading order. You don't want to jump from section to section or whatever in the document. You want to use lists for sequential or grouped information, and you want to include table of contents for longer documents. In the content, you want to write in the plain language, use an active voice, and define any technical terms and provide context for any acronyms that may be common knowledge for your department or whatever, but others may not be aware of those. And for the accessibility features, make sure, again, alt text to all images and graphics, use the sufficient color contrast, ensure proper document language settings. So if you're creating a document, say in Word, you want to be creating that in the native language, English. If you are creating it in Arabic or another English as a default setting, when you go to save that document as a PDF or other file format, it will break. It causes some issues with the translation into other formats. And again, you want to make sure that you test with screen readers. So when it comes to spreadsheets, Excel and data tables, their best practices are, again, use clear descriptive column headers. You want to freeze header rows for navigation. You want one data table per worksheet, and you want to name your worksheets descriptively. You want to keep your data consistent within columns, so you don't want one column actually overlaying or spreading into other columns where others may not. That will create a break in the flow of the document. You want to use data validation where appropriate, and you want to avoid using merged or split cells. Include any summary information. You want to set your print tiles or titles for multi-page printouts. You want to use built-in table formatting. Add, again, alt text for charts and graphs, and provide data summaries in accessible formats. So instead of having a full table with tons and tons and tons and tons of data in each row and columns, you want to create a summary that can be read by a screen reader without having to go line by line, column by column. It just makes it easier. It's a better experience for those using assistive technologies. For presentations, for PowerPoint and slide deck best practices, we're going to use built-in accessible slide layouts, maintain consistent structure. You want to have a logical order in your slides and transitions, and you want clear slide titles. Now, one of the things I've encountered when it comes to checking for accessibility with presentations, if you have content of a topic that spans multiple slides, you need to number the title of that slide, comma 1, comma 2, comma 3, and so forth. If you noticed last week, I had to do that in ours about the archiving and pre-existing document exceptions. The titles themselves had the comma to denote, okay, this is the first slide on this, second slide. It really helped improve the readability and accessibility of that slide. All right, let's see here. You want to limit text per slide. You don't want a slide that is completely overloaded with text, that it gets bunched up and jumbled together. It needs to be easily digestible. You want to use bullet points effectively. Again, high contrast color schemes, readable font sizes with a minimum of 20 points or higher. And again, as we do with every document, alt text to all images and charts. You want to make sure the slide reading order is correct. You want to include speaker notes when providing a finished document. And you want to, again, test with screen reader navigation. So that brings us to PDFs, one of the most popular document formats out there. We use them for just about everything. Fillable forms, reports, you name it, it's pretty much in a PDF format when it comes to state work. So when PDFs work best is for final print-ready documents. Forms designed for printing and manual completion offline, not fillable forms. Official records and archives, documents requiring exact formatting and preservation. So PDFs fail with interactive content and as fillable forms. Those were afterthoughts. The PDF format was created by Adobe in the early 90s. It's been roughly 32 years. And it was created to enable the reliable and consistent exchange of documents between different computers and operating systems, regardless of the software used to create it. This addressed the challenge of ensuring that documents would look the same on screen and when printed, regardless of the recipient's system. The initial goal was to allow users to easily share documents electronically, including text, images, and formatting, while maintaining their intended appearance. So Adobe owned and managed the PDF format until July 1st of 2008. Then it was released as an open standard and published by the International Organization for Standardization at that point. Now they own and control it. It's a committee that votes on new features or updates to the standard. The problem again here is that interactive elements in PDFs were an afterthought. They were not an original implementation design idea in the format. So they have added the fillable form option, videos, audio, things like that that you can import and add to PDFs. It doesn't follow best practices because it was an afterthought. Again, it wasn't the original intent of the document. The original intent of the document format was to provide print-ready documents that did not change when transmitted from system to system. Other than that, it wasn't thought of at that time for the interactive component. So to make PDFs accessible, you want to make sure you're using an accessible source document. You want to use proper tagging and structure. You want to test it again and provide alternative formats whenever possible. So next up, we're going to be addressing the digital divide. So how do we do this? So the current problem is PDF forms create barriers for screen readers. Mobile devices struggle with PDF form interaction. Inconsistent user experience across platforms, whether it be Android, iOS, Windows, and Mac. Now, Windows, Mac, Linux, they typically, and Chrome OS, they typically handle PDFs generally the same. Mobile operating systems like iOS and Android, they do not. Both systems use proprietary technologies to render the documents, and it creates poor user experience, which causes higher abandonment rates. So the solution, it's simple. HTML forms provided for digital completion. They're the most accessible format. They're responsive and interactive. PDF forms need to be used for print only, designed for manual completion on paper when you want to control the layout and the flow of the document and have that printed out for that individual to fill out. Yes, HTML forms do equal FormStack. That is the best option that we have right now. So why HTML forms are the accessible choice? They have native screen reader support, keyboard navigation is built in, mobile responsive design, real-time validation and error handling, and integration with various governmental systems that we use. So best practice, use proper form labels and field descriptions when creating forms. Group the related fields with field sets or sections in FormStack. Make sure the error messages are clear and concise. And you can include progress indicators for multi-step or longer forms. That really helps with usability so people get an idea, how long is this going to take me? And you want to test with keyboard only navigation. So again, load the page, start tabbing through, see what you can find. And if it flows, great. If not, fix it. So PDF forms, it's a print only choice, or should be. They are designed for manual completion. They allow adequate white space for handwriting, clear field boundaries and labels to make sure people understand what they're looking at, instructions for manual completion, and contact information for assistance. Print only and accessibility considerations. So the fonts need to be large and legible. Again, high contrast. You don't want to use light shades of gray, light bright colors like white, red, orange, or pale colors like pink. Things of that nature, it doesn't work very well at all when you go to print those out. Alternative submission methods also need to be provided and have multiple formats available. So implementation. Phase 1, this is where we should all be. You should be assessing and planning, at least auditing your existing documents and forms. You want to identify high priority items for conversion. You want to train your staff on accessibility principles. You want to establish quality assistance processes. Phase 2, we should also be here in conversion and creation, converting existing PDF forms to HTML, create accessible document templates, and develop style guides and standards, which those are provided for us. And then going forward, regular accessibility testing, user feedback collection, finding out what's working for your users and what's not, continuous training for your staff. We want to provide technology updates and improvements as file formats and as time changes. These are going to change, or they're going to get better over time, hopefully, not worse. But we got to continue to provide those updates. So here's how we get agency buy-in. We're going to address these common concerns. This will be too expensive. We need to show the long-term cost savings. We don't have the technical expertise. Provide training and resources to build that expertise in-house. Citizens prefer PDFs. Share user research showing otherwise, because oddly enough, it's the opposite. It's too complicated. Start with simple, high-impact changes. Simplify your documents. Remove all the extra fluff, all the extra design elements that you may not necessarily need. Demonstrate the value. You want to reduce support calls by doing this. You're going to improve your citizen satisfaction. You're going to follow legal compliance, and you're going to have a broader reach to all citizens. So tools and resources. Of course, we have our basic document creation tools. We've got Microsoft Office Accessibility Checker, Adobe Acrobat accessibility features, the WebAIM resources and guidelines, government accessibility standards. All these things are to guide us. Our testing tools, NVDA or JAWS, color contrast analyzers, keyboard navigation testing, mobile device testing, training resources, Section 508 compliance, plain language guidelines, accessibility best practices, and user experience research. All of these and more are available at teamtn.gov/accessibility. We're doing everything we can to make sure you guys have every resource available to you that you need. So how do we measure success? Key metrics: accessibility compliance rates, user satisfaction scores, support request volume, form completion rates. Another way to measure is if we do ACRs. We fill out the ACR form that we have available, and that may be up to your department to decide or determine the best approach using an ACR. Do you use it for each and every document, each and every web page, or do you do it for the web page as a whole? That's something we need to work on and figure out what's going to be the best move going forward with that. But once you collect that data, you're going to have the data there to glean from for the future use. Okay, this is where we were. Let's do this again. Oh, look, here's where we are. Here's where we've improved. So you then have those metrics to run with. And another way for measuring success is continuous improvement. You want to do regular user testing with disabled citizens. Find out what works for them, what doesn't. Provide feedback collection systems. Provide an email link. Hey, if you have any feedback, questions, or concerns, please let us know at this email address. Do accessibility audits and continued staff training, checking the effectiveness of how well they're creating accessible documents. So the call to action, next steps: conduct your accessibility audits of current documents if you haven't done so already. Prioritize the high impact conversions, those documents that are going to be the most in demand, the ones that are getting the most traffic, using analytics to determine, okay, where are users going? What documents are they hitting the most? Those are the ones that we should remediate first. Implement HTML first forms policy. So that's going to look different for every department or agency. But if you want a form to be fillable on a device that needs to be accessible, HTML first is the way to go. You want to train your staff on accessibility principles and establish ongoing quality assurance. So here's a quick rewind or review. Accessibility is not an afterthought. It's a fundamental requirement. Documents are tools that must be purposed, structured, and proper. Structure first, style second. HTML forms provide superior user experience for digital completion. PDF forms should be reserved for print-only use cases. Small changes can have a significant impact on accessibility. Couple that with training and consistent processes are essential at providing success in the future. So again, here's a few common questions and answers. Won't this cost too much and take too long? The initial investment pays dividends to reduce support costs and overhead, broader citizen engagement, and legal compliance. The time investment now will mitigate future issues going forward. So what about citizens who prefer PDFs? Provide choice. HTML forms for digital completion with a PDF option for printing. How do we handle complex forms? Break into logical sections, use progressive disclosure, and provide clear navigation. So now we're at the question and discussion portion. Let's discuss what challenges do you foresee or are currently experiencing in your agency? What document types should you prioritize? And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Kara.
Okay, and I see a lot of questions, and I want you all to know that we are facing all of the same challenges that you all are facing in your agency. In fact, I've pulled up one form where they are very, very reticent to change it, but it's going to have to change. And that's going to be up to John to figure out the best way. It is our new provider credentialing application. It's 29 pages. You'll see over here, I did an accessibility check on it. It has 66 warnings of split cells and 52 warnings of hard to read text contrast. It's a 29-page thing, and you can see as I go through it, it's got all the problems. So we're going to have to figure out, just as you are, how to make all of these the best possible, most accessible forms. And I'm sure that a lot of people have forms that are similar to them. So once we do one of these forms, we'll share what we did with it to you all. But this is not a battle that any agency is fighting, that we're not fighting as well. We're fighting this battle internally every single day when it comes to some of these things. Couple of things. Can documents, somebody asked, can documents in AEM that have never been published be found, or just ones that were once published? John, do you know the answer to this one?
Not off the top of my head. I've not tested this yet, but my understanding is if a document was published and then unpublished, if you search, you can use either the tn.gov search or like Google, if they've crawled the site recently, they can still find the document. So that's why the best course of action is if it's not published, it doesn't need to be on or in AEM.
One of the things I wanted to mention that Jim Guffey just said, there's a quick FYI, not all departments are included in the ADA compliance tracking dashboard. Only consolidated agencies are listed. Since TennCare is not a consolidated agency, we are not part of the dashboard. That is one thing that I also want to note when you're looking at that plan view. Those are the apps. All of those apps that are in there are only those that are the known apps to the STS consolidated consolidated agencies. So there may be, if you are not one of those agencies, your apps, that's a big thing. We're all very focused on the web content, the documents, but the apps are just as important. You might want to be checking with your STS folks or your IT folks, if they're not STS, on what's going on with your apps. How are they being remediated? If there's a third party that's that built your app, are they going to them to figure out how to remediate it? So this is just my warning, shall we say, that you need, if you are not one of the STS agencies, and really if you are one too, knowing what's going on with your apps is an important part of the compliance. It was a good reminder to me to check with our STS person. We are a consolidated agency, to see how progress was going on our applications, to make sure that it was going well. And the AEM team, they are looking very seriously at that. They are also looking at a remedy and something that can be used enterprise-wide when it comes to the apps they know about, that they can figure out some fixes there. Natalie brought up the Working for a Healthier Tennessee and Partners for Health websites are included under FNA. While we are part of FNA, we have separate websites. The dashboard makes it difficult to see which pages and assets are ours. That is where that search function that John was showing is very helpful. If you go to that, if for those sites that are under the dashboard as another agency, if you go to your group, like the Working for Healthier Tennessee or another group, and then just press that empty search, that search bar button, but don't put anything in the search tab, in the search box, you'll get a list of all of your PDFs and can go through that way to identify which ones are accessible and not accessible. If we include non-fillable PDFs as well, can we share fillable PDFs to the website? We have several resources that we have linked to fillable versions of it. I want to get, because that's going to be a question for us that we haven't answered yet. I would want my legals. My thought was we could share via email if somebody asks for, so that somebody can print out or have printed copies on hand in our regional office. I'm not entirely sure on what my legal would say about that. John, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes. If you have a fillable PDF and it's already laid out and formatted, they can easily print that PDF itself and it look just exactly like a basic printable version. The problem comes with accessibility in the fillable portion of a fillable form as a PDF, because again, it wasn't created with the intent of being an interactive form. PDFs were created with the intent of maintaining the proper view that was created for the PDF. So let's say all images, text, the layout, everything needs to maintain standard formatting. That is what the PDF was originally created to do. Any of the additional things like the form fields and things like that we do, that we've added, in the years past, it again was shoehorned in. It wasn't something that was originally thought of with accessibility in mind, because, oh yeah, we can make these fillable. Well, now you're creating a lot of problems when it comes to accessibility. And the easiest way, believe it or not, to fix this and address this is to create an HTML form using FormStack and then create a PDF print only version that doesn't have the interactive elements. You can make that read only or print only PDF accessible a lot easier than you can one that's got a lot, like 20 to 30 plus form fields in it. Does it add a lot of features when you're creating a fillable form in PDF? Yes, but it creates a way larger headache when it comes to remediate that. So HTML forms, the best practice after researching this, the best practice across the entire industry, this is everyone across the globe, is to have an HTML version and a print only version for hard copies.
It's something that is being tackled there. John has I think the webinar is not yet, but there's actually a webinar for state IT state IT folks called "That Doesn't Need to Be a PDF" from the accessibility people to help provide some guidance on this issue. I can't remember who's putting on the webinar. Was it ACL? Well, ADA.gov or was it another? So that is something that is definitely it's a problem for everyone.
Yeah.
During TDOT's ADA weekly office hours, we received questions about scanned documents that are scanned to PDF. This question drove a discussion about optical character recognition. We are still discussing how to address scanned documents.
Yeah.
Now, if the scanned document is able to be, is an archived, because if it's a scanned document, likely not going to change, it could be considered, and this is something, if it's not being used to actively apply for services or provide services, it could qualify for one of the exceptions, whether it's archiving it or whether it's a pre-existing document. But that's where you have to check with your legal to make sure it meets those conditions we talked about in the last meeting. But oftentimes a scanned PDF, since it's a document that was scanned to PDF, it's probably not going to change. And so that's where some of those exceptions might be able to come in, because oftentimes those documents are not something where you're going to go in and you're going to modify it, because if you do, you're going to have to rescan a new document. And at that point, that's not an that counts. So, just
one thing I was going to say,
John.
one thing to add to that is when you scan a document in, I would say a majority of the time, probably at least 60 to 70% of the time, that document is saved as an image only PDF. So even though it's got the PDF file extension, most of the text will not be editable. If it's editable, each letter of the alphabet will become disjointed. The flow will fail. You will create a lot of problems. So archiving purposes, scanned documents, those will work. But as Kara mentioned, if you're going to be updating a document or using a document or scanning in a document that has applications to current processes, systems, or activities that your department or agency is providing, it has to be remediated, which means you may have to create that document from scratch.
Yeah, after our accessibility date, scanned documents are probably not going to fly, period.
Good point. Thank you.
Adobe recommended that we convert our PDF forms to Adobe Sign. Are you recommending FormStack over Adobe Sign?
Me personally, yes. And the reason I'm recommending that is because Adobe Sign provides a few enhancements when it comes to fillable forms using PDF. But again, it's an afterthought. It's shoehorned in as part of technology to make something work where it wasn't originally intended to work. If we want to offer the best solution or the best option, again, that's going to be HTML forms for fillable forms online on any device and PDFs for print only.
Rick says, I have used an ADA checker on our FormStack forms and they seem not to pass with errors showing in the coding, which we obviously can't access. Has there been a check on if it is ADA compliant?
So I do know the form that we provided the link to, which if I can find it, for the survey at the beginning of the meeting. It is simple, clean, easy to use, and if I'm not mistaken, accessible. I believe, let me reshare the link again. There we go. The form itself should pass for accessibility. Now, there may be a few smaller issues I've got to address, but you'll see that each field is clean, it's laid out, it's very basic, and it's look and feel. Now, we did reach out to the FormStack team to get access to edit the theme that we have, that we offer. So I took a base theme, their most accessible basic theme, and I built off of it. And all I did was basically tweak the colors because they were a little light, and then added our logo to the form at the top. That's it. I kept it simple. And that's going to be the best approach, is making sure that it is simple. Now, we do have plans to meet with the FormStack team and discuss, creating basic, accessible templates for everyone to use going forward. Outside of, some of the older form styles that we had, as I understand, like TN.gov recently updated to Bootstrap 5.3 or whatever it was. FormStack can use Bootstrap styles, but if you update one and you don't update the other, it can create issues. That's why we went with a basic. There's not a lot of extra in there to cause problems.
Okay. Let's see. I'm glad DCS, we have roughly 600 PDF forms and it makes me want to cry when I look at them since this started. We are all formatted with tables and words, so it is not compliant. But how do you format a form to not just be line by line questions? I can't wait to see what the others are doing about their forms. Once a URL, oh, this is Dean talking about the archiving, or not the archiving, the search. Once a URL is indexed in a search engine, including the URL of a document, it's always going to be there. Only thing to do is wait enough for file not found results to pile up in the search algorithms to push that unpublished document URL way down in the returns. As somebody who, and Dean is correct, as somebody who I think most of you know, our disability and aging website is new. We actually built it from the ground up last year because we were DIDD prior to that, before we merged into the Department of Disability and Aging. We had to, for a while, just as a backup in case we forgot a page or something like that, we unpublished it and kept the DIDD, tn.gov /DIDD and all the subpages out there. They were still showing up in search. Eventually, some would come up with 404s, but a lot of them, if you searched them, you could find them. So we had to remove all of we removed all of those pages from AEM after, and then we learned we had some links on where people hadn't updated the links on the new site that caused us to have 404s. But yes, it will show up in search for a while. If somebody is looking, like if somebody was looking at our interested in services page, they could find the old one. So yeah, it's, when in doubt, don't unpublish, remove from AEM. Some of these are forms that were provided by external partners, so not actually documents that we are collecting data on. Now, that is something that we have asked our third party. I have done this 5 times in the past week, where our third party folks have sent us forms to put on our website, or resources or documents to put on our website. And I've turned them around and said, I can't put this on our website because it's not ADA compliant, and I can't fix it because I did not create it. So we have turned those around and asked them to make them compliant. But you're right, that is a problem. Third-party forms are going to be a problem because of the fact that if you didn't create it, oftentimes you can't remediate it. So those are some things that you have. So a few of our forms would be good candidates for FormStack, but most are not due to our processes. It would really be helpful to have a demo on solutions outside of FormStack. And then somebody said, so posting links to non-fillable forms for printing and an HTML version is not best practice. I do not believe that to be the case. I just want to make sure that is you can keep a printed version for folks, but it cannot be posted on your external website.
You can.
HTML.
I'm sorry. I was going to say that you can provide links to non-fillable PDFs for printing as a print-only option, and they can be compliant. That's not an issue. The headache that we're trying to bring to light here is that fillable PDF forms introduce way more errors than they provide solutions. So if you're trying to remediate a PDF fillable form and you're hitting a brick wall, you're not able to get around it, you might want to consider moving to an HTML form using FormStack or whatever other provider you can find that is on contract with the state. The best practice is to provide HTML forms or FormStack forms, just for now, for filling out online. They're going to be accessible on every device. If you provide a link to a non-fillable PDF for printing that's compliant, you're fine. And you can provide links to both, unfillable online, printable for offline. If you want to provide those, there's nothing saying you can't. You can provide both of those. It's just that if you have a PDF fillable form that, is a real pain to remediate, you need to look at your other options. And the quickest, easiest option to get this taken care of, create an HTML version of it and then make it a PDF only. Remove the form fields from the PDF and then save it. And then you've got a printable version right there.
I would say this. I would also say that we're not saying you can't use PDFs. If you can make, because somebody asked if they did that they were trained by an ADA expert. If your form is compliant, but you can use a PDF. What we're saying is it is really, 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 really hard to remediate fillable forms and also create accessible fillable forms. And then somebody says, don't underestimate FormStack. I'm curious to see examples of forms that wouldn't work in FormStack. The issue is for our team is that they're so used to the PDF format and updating their process, specifically in cases where they need to go back and forth on a form before it's finished. The FormStack has intermediate roles for this. I just haven't explored them yet. And then Matthew said, when I do the blank search on my website, I don't see an option for files. I'm not sure why you're not seeing that option for files. April, do you have any feedback on that?
I don't specifically have feedback, but I would wonder if you actually have files. So I saw Leslie and Michael are in here if they could answer that question on an AEM request. Do you know, in fact, that you should have files?
Hey, yeah, we should have several hundred files. Like, I think there's like 900, maybe 1,000 files that should be out there.
Leslie or Michael, can you address that?
What is the question?
Why does he not see his files when he does a blank search on his website when he knows he has files in AEM?
Because the files that are in their format are the assets folder area isn't named the same as the sites area. So that's why it's not showing up when it's searched.
Ah.
So that means I win the lottery, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much. Okay, our vehicle services forms can go to one of 95 different county clerks. They do not go to us directly in most cases. Our tax forms, if people do not file online through our TN TAP website, need to be scanned by our machines. So, and then Dean says, sounds like there needs to be a forms compliance subcommittee. I'm not discounting that idea, Dean, because I think that if I look down and see everything that is still here about forms, we're not going to get to every question or every comment about forms today because of the fact that because it's 11:51 already. Somebody
Now,
asked, does that
I
mean
will-
we'll need to create all of our current forms to a new template that has been created? No. What we're saying is that if you're having accessibility issues in forms, they need to be remediated. You don't now that doesn't mean you have to recreate a new form, but a lot of us have PDFs. I mean, that one I showed you that's 29 pages long for new credential providing, we're going to have to, there is no remediating that form properly without because the whole thing is a split cell. It might as well just be like one big glaring, this entire form has 66 split cells. We're going to have to recreate that form. And how we do it, I don't think that we've figured it out. I will tell you that group has pushed back very hard on using FormStack. And that might be one where we have to show them that it can work for them to believe us that it can work.
Yeah.
And if we do show them, then we'll show you all too.
Yes. And to make sure we understand, when you're asking if you have to recreate all your current forms, if it's in FormStack, no. You go into your form, you select a new theme, and you're done. Once you apply that new theme style to it, we create new accessible theme styles for each department. That's one of the things we're wanting to meet with them and talk about, is that way people don't have to recreate the whole form, any logic, everything that they've applied to it in FormStack. They can just go in, update the style, and be done with it.
Okay, if we're meeting with FormStack, you might ask if we can convert current forms to roll over to the new templates that will make them more accessible. Good note, Rick. Somebody said, just an FYI, while fillable web forms are great for data collection, they don't replace formal, legally recognized documents like finalized signed PDFs. Tools like Adobe Sign offer audit-proof records with tamper-evident seals, timestamps, and authentication logs, capabilities a basic web form doesn't provide. It may be worth checking the applicable RDAs and consulting with the comptroller's office to confirm whether web forms are acceptable replacements in this context. That is definitely something that we'll also bring up with our legal, because they will care about this issue as well. And that is, Paul, that's a very good note. If a FormStack form is embedded on a tn.gov webpage, is it compliant if the form itself is compliant? John.
Well, that depends on the page. If if the page it's being posted into is not compliant, then no, it's going to fail. It's not that the form failed it, it's that the page itself failed. So if you have an embedded form, it should pass, but typically embeds using automated tools do not render. And if that's the case, then as long as the form itself is compliant and the page itself is compliant, you shouldn't have any issues.
In the past, the EDS web group meetings team provided us warnings that the state account was hitting the maximum number of FormStack forms. Do you know if we have upgraded our account? I have been weary to create new FormStack forms since those emails. Yes, I remember that actually, Kyle, and that caused us to go in and remove a lot of FormStack forms, because we had used them for surveys, that like our employee surveys and stuff like that we didn't need, that were 3 years old, and we didn't need that data. But it's definitely, I have not heard those warnings recently. So, but that is also something that's worth making sure that we know about. So let's see. We're hearing from some of our vendors' accessibility teams that the VPAT is typically used to assess the accessibility of websites and other digital properties and is not used to rate the accessibility of PDFs or other documents. These teams are recommended the PDF accessibility checker for accessing documents. Can we consider the PAC report an acceptable substitute for the VPAT for vendor documents we host on our website?
So that's a good question. I'm afraid I don't have an answer to it, but I do know that under our resources in the ADA Tools standard products list, we do have the PDF accessibility checker, which is a downloadable application. So it has been provided as one of the options that we can use. Let's see. Looks like it was added in April of this year, approximately. And you can put a request in to have that installed on your machine, and you can run those reports yourself. I actually believe that it may be a locally runnable application, so it may not need an installation, depending on, the policies of your department or agency. But the PAC is a great tool to use when looking at remediating some of these documents.
Okay, what's up with Tableau? Saw them on the open issues list. Not sure if the issue listed is the same as we've asked about, e.g. auto resizing of output visuals. Do we have anyone, Michael, is that one that you're aware of?
That's, I do not handle Tableau,
Okay.
so I'm not sure of that.
Okay.
That's
we'll
one of my solutions I'm researching, Kara.
Okay.
No update at this time.
Can EDS support speak to this about the form stack hitting the form?
Those are only sent out whenever FormStack notifies us that we are getting close to the limit, and then we have to do research and send out those communications. And we haven't received any in a while, but we're getting close, so those may be coming out in the near future.
Okay. Was this site ever vetted for use as a replacement for the portable, the PDF accessibility checker? I'm going to turn that over to April. April and her team have vetted a lot of things.
I will double check that, Keith, and get back to you because, like Kara said, we've vetted a lot. So I don't know off the top of my head, but I'll check and get back.
And then Paul said, if anyone's looking for an alternative to FormStack, I'm happy to demo PlumSail. It integrates with Power Automate and offers more flexibility, especially with custom logic via JavaScript. So
I would just caution with new software that we make sure we take it through the exception process through your agency. So there have been some tools that have been asked about lately, and if they've not been through the exception process, that is necessary to install any software on a state computer. So just make sure that you've checked with your IT folks and ensured that you've had an exception request approved for other tools.
Thank you, April. I have learned a lot about that process in the past 3 weeks. And I will defer to April on all of those things that involve tools and going through the exception process, because candidly, there are a lot of security things that don't come to the mind of a communications professional that do come to the mind of an IT professional. And I've learned a lot about that world over the past 2 weeks. Okay, we're out of time. it is definitely sounds like we need to have more on forums and more discussion about forums than this. Next week, we do have video captioning and social media and some of the other things that we're working on with video stuff. That was something that was specifically requested in some of our meetings or some of the surveys. So Kathleen Hilt is going to take you through that. And we are not done with forums, because there's still a lot of stuff that we need to talk about and discuss and find some solutions for. So that's definitely something I think that is going to become a priority for us as well at DDA, is to really figure out what we can do. What are some of the things that we can do? Because I don't think this forms issue is going away, but I also think that we can't keep it the way it is now. So we've got to find something that several solutions that work. So with that, we'll talk more in coming weeks, and hope you guys have a good day.